Okay, so hi, data fellows. Do you remember the first time you started using Power BI? It kind of felt like a game changer, right? Suddenly you have all this data on your fingertips and you can manipulate it in all sorts of ways, and you uncover insights that you never even knew existed. And then you work tirelessly. You create the best report you've ever created, and you're just confident that everyone's going to love it. But then you present it to your client or your boss, and they're just underwhelmed. They say your report is not so easy to understand. They expected more. They wanted the wow effect. Sounds familiar? But why? What went wrong? You did all the necessary data analysis. You followed all the best practices, and yet they don't love your report. Well, the answer lies in UX design. UX is, or user experience, is all about making things user-friendly. And it's no different when it comes to data visualization. And this is exactly why we're here today. So today we're going to talk about creating visually appealing reports, not just for the sake of aesthetics, but because we believe in the power of effective communication. We are not creating reports, we are telling stories that captivate our audience, stories that inspire action and drive results. I'm Elena Drakulevska, and welcome to my session, Power BI meets UX Design Principles, creating accessible, intuitive, and visually appealing reports. Now, before we start, I just want to give you a brief introduction about myself and my background. So, as I said earlier in the chat, if you were following, so I come from Macedonia and I studied in Italy for a while. So I obtained my master's degree in telecommunications engineering from Politecnico di Milano. And then 2 years ago, I moved to Vienna. You can still find me here. And I've been working as a data consultant and with Power BI for the past 2 years, so ever since I moved. And I have a newfound love for UX design. So just a disclaimer here, so I'm not an expert in UX, but last year I stumbled upon this amazing course from Google, and I just fell in love with it. And then I realized, okay, a lot of these things can be implemented in Power BI as well. So this is actually how this session got created. I have a lot of interests, so I love reading books, traveling, learning languages, doing yoga, you name it, I'm there. And here on the right side, you can find my contact details. No worries, you don't need to write down anything at this moment, so I'll share my contact details at the end of the session as well. Now, I assume most of you come from a Power BI background. So whether you are a beginner or an intermediate user, it doesn't matter. You can still benefit from this session as it covers the basics of UX design. If you come from any other background, like a Tableau or maybe some other visualization tool, no worries, stay here. I can guarantee you'll find something useful as well. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the world of UX design and uncover how we can create compelling narratives. Okay, so today we have a lot to cover. We'll talk first about what is UX design, and I'll give you a brief introduction into the UX design process. Just please keep in mind this is a huge topic, and it's literally impossible to cover everything in just one session of 50 minutes. But I'll give you the basics and the most important aspects for data visualization and Power BI. And we'll talk about 3 big topics for today. So first about visual perception and Gestalt principles. Then we'll talk about adding color to your reports, like how to draw your user's attention and convey meaning with color. And then we'll talk about how you can make your reports more accessible. Because one thing is creating visually appealing reports, but we also want to make sure that everyone can understand them so that they're inclusive and accessible. And then we'll put it all together. So we'll go over some use cases, some real life examples of both good and bad UX design. And in the end of the session, I'll give you the key takeaways that I would like all of you to remember from today. And that should leave around 10 minutes for your questions in the end. So please feel free to ask whatever is on your mind. Are you ready? Let's dive in. So you might be thinking, what on earth is UX design? Why should I care about it? Well, to answer you this question, let me show you the next image. Have you ever found yourself pulling a door that you were supposed to push, or vice versa? How many times have you done this? Like, be honest. Or maybe the door just slides, and if so, in which direction? Left or right? Or maybe the door swings. Well, if this has happened to you, and I believe it happens to all of us on a daily basis, I can assure you it's not your fault. So this is a classic example of what we of a bad design. So it's what we call a Norman door, named after the design guru Don Norman. So his work has had a really significant impact in the field of UX, and it all started with a simple question. How can something as simple as a door be so confusing? There is not so much you can do to a door, right? You can either open it or close it, and yet we all still struggle opening doors. Norman doors are a great example of why design matters and why we need to care about UX design in particular. So, what exactly is UX design? Is it a bunch of pretty pictures? I hope you all know the answer to this question by now. So UX is not about aesthetics, it's about function. And at its core, UX design is about putting the user in the center. So it's how a user feels about interacting with or experiencing a product. So it's about understanding the users and designing products that meet their needs. And UX is a process, and it consists of 5 stages. So it follows the design thinking process. So have the first stage, understand, then define, ideate, prototype, and test. Now, let's go over into some more details. The first stage, understand, is about understanding the users we are designing for. It's about understanding their needs by gathering information, either through observation or conducting interviews, or maybe just from putting ourselves in their shoes. And this is also why this phase is also called empathize. So we empathize with our users. And when it comes to Power BI, for example, you might want to ask the end users to learn about their struggles when it comes to understanding data. So you can ask about their preferences or for their needs, so you can get a deep understanding of what they want from our report. Now, the second stage is called define, and it involves using the insights that we gathered in the previous stage, empathize, and in order to define the user's problem we are trying to solve. So this means defining the problem statement, the needs, the requirements, but also any constraints. For example, based on the interviews, you might want to define the problem as end users struggle to understand where they can cut on some costs, and so on. And this stage is really crucial for creating a product that meets the needs of our users. Now, the third stage is called ideate, and it involves generating a really wide range of ideas. So this is where we get creative. And it's really about one thing that you need to keep in mind here is that you shouldn't judge any of the ideas you come up with. So it's about being creative. You can, for example, brainstorm several ideas, how to make interactive charts or which key metrics to include in your dashboard and so on. And then in the prototype phase, we create a basic, very simple version of the solution. So we can later on test it with some end users and maybe even refine our idea. So for example, you might want to create a prototype of the report just with some basic or just with a couple of key metrics. You can also include dummy data, so you really don't need current data for this. And This allows us to see how users would interact with our product, and we can also make any necessary changes. And then in the fifth stage test, we test our prototype. So for example, you might want to also get our feedback on the report's usability and usefulness. And this stage is critical for refining our product and ensuring that it's user-friendly and effective. But also by first testing our prototype, we can also save a lot of time and resources later on in the engineering side of the product, of the report development. And now you might say, okay, but this is so long, why would I bother going through this whole process? Now, have you ever found yourself redoing your reports? Like you spent hours and hours creating a report, maybe even days, only to find out that it's not what your boss wanted. Or maybe the client comes up with some requirements just before the deadline. It can be frustrating, right? We've all been there and it's not fun. And this is why every UX design process starts with UX research. UX research is one of the key components of UX design, and it involves studying the users to gain insights into their needs and behaviors. But now, what happens if you're tight on time? Your clients want to see results right away. You cannot afford to lose time, so you decide there is no time for research. And this leads us to our key takeaway for today. So this is the moment where you really need UX research. So you cannot really afford to spend time in the future redesigning your report. So the first key takeaway says, always do your research, especially when you're tight on time, because you need to have it right ever since the beginning. Now, UX research is nice. It gives us an introduction, it gives us an insight into people's needs, behaviors, and also in their mental models, which brings us to the following topic, visual perception. Now, mental models are assumptions that users have in their minds before they interact with the product or the report we are trying to create. So by understanding their mental models, we can create reports that are more intuitive and easier to use, and it can also help us identify any pain points that the users might face. However, understanding mental models is just one piece of the puzzle. Now, human brains process information in certain ways, which is also what affects how we process visual information. Like take, for example, how we read. So our eyes scan so-called Z or F patterns just because how our eyes move through the screen. So for example, if you're scanning, if you're reading a book, you would scan in this pattern. Maybe if you're reading a website, it would be more like an F pattern and so on. So this is also called a zigzag because of how our eyes move through the screen. So we read left to right, top to bottom. And this is why in many cases, when we design our reports, we need to place the most important information in the top left corner. And as we move along to place the least important information in the bottom right corner. And it's also one of the reasons why companies like to put their logo here in the top left corner, because it's important. It's the first thing that people are going to see. And so on. So this is a very nice rule of thumb, right? So left to right, top to bottom. And rules of thumb are really nice because they help us and they guide us. But what if I showed you this? Now, this is a website in Arabic. And for those of us who speak languages like English that are read from left to right, it might seem counterintuitive. But there are actually more than 2 billion people in the world that read a language that it's read the other way around. So when it comes to reporting, we want to make sure that we place the most important information in the top right corner, and then the least important information over here. So this is a screenshot from a website. You can even see that this place is also left blank. So this is the inverse F pattern. And rules of thumb. So rules of thumb are really nice, but they can also create bias. And UX is all about understanding this bias and avoiding it. And this leads us to our second key takeaway from today, and probably even the most important one. So I hope you pay attention. So always think about the user you're designing for, even when you're following rules of thumb. So the next time you're designing a report, remember to consider not only the mental models of your users, but also any linguistic and cultural backgrounds that they might have. And always question your assumptions. So try to avoid any potential bias you might have. And this is all nice, but let's see how we can further organize our information on the page. And luckily for you, Gestalt principles come to the rescue. Have you ever heard about Gestalt? So it's a theory of visual perception that helps us understand how our brains process visual information. And the theory was first proposed by German psychologists in the first half of the 20th century. And the word Gestalt in German means form or shape. But not to bother you with any theory, I just want to show you what we mean by Gestalt principles. So take a look at the following image. So you can probably see a triangle here, right? Our brains naturally see a triangle here because of the way how the white space is arranged, or the black space, if you will. There are actually 3 white pigments, I hope you can all see them, on a black background. And that gives us the illusion of a triangle. So this is an example of the Gestalt principle called closure, and which suggests that we tend to see incomplete shapes as complete ones. So our brains really complete the missing information, and that's how we are able to see the triangle over here. Gestalt principles include several other principles. We're not going to go into a lot of details about everything, so we're just going to concentrate on similarity, proximity, and common region. But if you're interested, go ahead and read more about the rest of them. Now, the principle of similarity states that when things appear to be similar to each other, we group them together. And we tend to think that they have the same function. Like, for example, imagine a button, right? You know right away that it's a button, that it's clickable, and so on. And there are different ways of making elements be perceived as being similar and also related. Like, for example, over here. Now here we can see a group of circles and a group of squares. This means that we perceive 2 groups based on shape. Or, for example, over here, we have a group of light green circles and a group of dark green circles. So this means that we group them by color. And when similarity occurs, an object can get emphasized just by being different from the rest. So our eyes immediately follow this object, and it's called anomaly, and it can be used to create either contrast or just to draw the user's attention over there to this point. Now, the principle of proximity states that things that are close together appear to be more related than the things that are spaced apart. So, for example, on the left over here, we can see one group of circles. You can see they're all equally spaced and so on. While here on the right side, our brains can see 2 groups. So just because some elements are closer compared to others. So how to use this information for Power BI, for example? Well, let's reverse engineer it. So this means that we need to place items that are related close to each other, and the unrelated items should stay further apart. Now, the third Gestalt principle for today is common region. And the principle of common region is highly related to the one of proximity. And it states that when objects are located within the same closed region, we perceive them as being grouped together. Now, this principle is particularly useful because it can help us with information grouping content organization, but it can also achieve content separation. Like we can see here, one group placed in certain common region. And this separation can also be done either by using a shape, a line, maybe even color, a background color, and so on. And now that I bothered you with all this theory, let's see how everything would come together on one report. So take a look at this one, for example. Now, can you notice any Gestalt principles that we just discussed? I'm going to leave you a couple of seconds so you can think for yourself. So here, for example, the principle of similarity. We can see it over here. Let's say we can notice that those are 4 cards, probably some KPI metrics, and they all look similar to each other. Also, maybe proximity. We can see that these KPI metrics are more important and they're placed closer together, while these are kind of separated from these ones over here, although they are kind of similar. And what about the principle of common region? Now we can see that every separate visual is enclosed in a special separate region like this, but we can also see it here on the left. So here we can clearly see how the navigation bar is separated from the rest. So this also makes it one separate common region. Now, that leads us to the third key takeaway for today. So by applying Gestalt principles, our designs can really help users find the information they need more easily. So please use the Gestalt principles so you can make your designs more intuitive. And now that we talked about Gestalt principles, let's see how we can use color. So color is another important aspect of visual design. And let's see how we can draw the user's attention to it and convey meaning. Now, color is more than just a pretty palette. It's a powerful tool that can evoke emotions, emphasize important information, even communicate brand identity. And by using color thoughtfully and intentionally, we can create reports that not only look nice and are visually appealing, but that they can also convey information effectively. Now, for example, I really like this rule. It's called the 60-30-10 rule. This means that using 60% of one neutral color, 30% of a complementary color, and 10% for a third accent color. So for example, you can use the neutral color for the background, the second color for your text, and the third color for emphasis. Now, one important aspect I also want to mention here is that different colors can have different meaning. And not only that, but also in different cultures, the same color can mean a different thing. Like, for example, if you take red, not just because I'm wearing this jacket, in the Western world, red signifies passion or danger, while in the Asian world, it can mean happiness or good luck. Now, it's important really to research and consider any cultural context when choosing colors for your reports. And how do you choose the right colors? So it's with the help of something called color harmonies. And no worries, you don't need to know any complex color theory for this, because there are a bunch of tools available online. Most of them are completely free to use, and you can just go ahead and pick one tool and see how you can choose the colors. But for today, we'll take, for example, the color wheel from Adobe. If you want to follow along, you can also head to color.adobe.com. And this is how it looks. So here under the Create tab, we can see our color wheel. And here on the left side, we can see different color harmony rules. Now, those rules ensure that the colors that we choose are in balance, so that it's pleasant for our eyes to see. Now let's explore this for a bit. We have, for example, monochromatic. We can see here is just one color and different shades of it. Or we can have complementary, so we can have a complementary contrast between the colors. We can see that they're at both ends of the, or different ends of the spectrum, or maybe the square. So we have 4 colors arranged in a square around this color wheel. And let's see how this looks. So I'll take, for example, the split complementary for this example. And here, the most important thing to notice is that we have one basic color, base color. So we can notice it by this triangle over here, and on the color wheel with this pointer or the same triangle. Now, as we move this color around the color wheel, we can see how the rest of the colors follow along. And this makes sure that the colors are always in balance. And once you choose your palette, you can copy the hex codes from over here and use them in your design. Also, if you have a certain color that you want to use, just paste the hex code over here, and it will give you the colors that are compatible with that one. Now here you can also explore what are the other tools. In the Explore tab, you can also see some predefined color palettes and even images and so on. In the trends as well, more or less the same, just they're separated by different industries, so we can see even UI, UX, or architecture, game design, and so on. Now, there's one more other tool that I want to show to you. It's called Colors, but with a double O over here. So it's colors.com. And here again, you can also generate different color palettes, but you can also explore some trending ones. Yeah, it depends what you like. If you want to choose some pre-existing palettes or generate your own, yeah, whichever you prefer. Now, you might say, yeah, perfect, but when you choose the colors, you just don't like how your dashboards look. And there are tools even for that. Can you imagine? Like a couple of weeks ago, I ran into this amazing tool called Dashboard Color Tester. And here you can see how the colors look on a report. It's pretty basic visuals, so just these 4. But you can choose from some pre-existing themes over here, or why am I showing you this is because you can head over to colors. You can just quickly copy URL and you can paste it over here. And you can see how those colors would look like on your report. It's amazing, right? Like you don't need to spend a lot of time just testing your colors in Power BI. You can just try them out over here. Now, this is what I wanted to show you about the colors. Let me just bring it back. And the key takeaway from this part would be, so when it comes to colors, really less is more. Just please don't overdo it. Don't use many colors. 3 to 5, just limit it to this number. Keep it simple. So by using color thoughtfully and intentionally, you can create reports that not only convey information, but also look visually appealing and engaging to your audience. And use the color wheel so you can make your designs visually appealing. So you can always have the right colors. Now, colors are nice, but they can also play a significant role in making our designs more accessible. And accessibility is crucial for ensuring that our reports can be used and understood by everyone. And to understand why accessibility matters, I would like you to have a look at this picture. So, for someone without visual impairments, it's quite easy to tell the green and red apples apart, right? But for someone with a visual impairment or some deficiency, it might be quite the challenge. And this is why it's important really to choose colors that not only work well together, but also provide enough contrast so that everyone can see them. Another example is this dress that went viral a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember it. So some people saw this dress as white and gold, and some saw it as black and white. It's crazy, right? And this also highlights the importance of choosing the right colors and choosing colors that are universally recognizable. And if you're still not convinced, let's take a look at some numbers. So did you know that 1 in 6 people in the world live with some form of disability? That's actually more than 1 billion people in the world. And out of these people, so out of this number, even 300 million people have color vision deficiency. And this number is actually even expected to rise, even to double by the year 2050. And these numbers are important because we don't want to create only visually appealing designs, right? But we also want designs that are inclusive and accessible for everyone. Now, there are some things that you can do. So first of all, make sure that the color contrast ratio that you use is at least 4.5 to 1. This is according to the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And so you need to make sure that the color of your text and the color of your background have sufficient contrast. And no worries, there are tools also for this. And I'm going to show you the one on Adobe because we just looked at it as well. So here, the same page, create, and then here in the accessibility tools, we can see our contrast checker. So we can just input our hex codes for the text and for the backgrounds, and we can check our contrast. And here, with this example, there is 3.33 to 1, and this is a clear fail over here. And now, if we head in the bottom, so here below, we can see that there is a clear path for icons and actionable graphics. Also, there is a path for large text, but there is a fail for a small text. Now, it depends really depends why you're using this. Like if you have only big elements or smaller ones, but I would still go with preferring a 4.5 contrast ratio. Then you can also just slide this left to right, make sure that the contrast is sufficient, and we can see now a pass and a 4.56 contrast ratio. And now we can just go ahead and change the previous color for green that we had with this one over here. Now, also here under tools, we can see color blind safe. And for example, it shows which colors are in conflict for people that have visual impairments. Now, again, you can move around these circles. You can see these lines that are showing, and you can see between which colors there is a conflict. And you need to make sure that no color is in conflict, and here your color palette would be. Now, even here in the bottom, you can see a simulator for different types of visual impairment. And you can even see how those colors would be perceived. And then when you head back to the color wheel, you can see these colors already picked, and you can just go ahead and copy the hex codes and use them. One more thing I want to mention here, so you can also even save the palette. But you need to have an account for that, so that's why we won't go into details. So all of these things that I showed you are completely free. You don't need any accounts. You can just use them. And yes, I can just bring this back. Now, some other things you can do is finding other ways of conveying information, like using icons, patterns in Power BI, or even dashed lines when it comes to line charts. Or you can also use universal icons just make sure that all the navigation and buttons use universal icons, so they are globally, let's say, understandable. And you can also use text in addition to icons when it comes to navigation, for example, or to buttons, because that way you can avoid any misunderstandings that there might be. And also screen readers, as Power BI is screen reader compatible, you just need to add some labels and descriptions for that. And now we're going to head to Power BI, and I'm just going to show you some of these things, how they can be implemented. Okay, I hope you can see the screen. As I didn't get a no, I assume it is so. So for example, there are some, thanks. So there are some things that are already pre-built in Power BI. Like even, for example, over here about the themes, you can see there are some accessible themes to choose from, apart from the standard themes from Power BI. So if you don't really want to bother yourself that much with picking the right colors, and so Power BI really makes it easy. You can just pick some of those themes. Now, if we head over here, so it's a very simple couple of things on my report over here. And the first thing that's also pre-built in Power BI is key navigation. So when you press tab, you can just go around and move around the items, the elements on your screen. But for this, you need to make sure that the tab order is right. So if you imagine the whole report, you want to have like the first line, for example, or if it's about slicers, you want to read them first and then to go around, and you need to make sure that the order is right. Like, for example, we don't want to jump from here to here and then again here. And you can make these changes. So here in the selection, there is tab order, and we can see that clearly now our tab order is first unemployed by age and so on. So we want to make sure there is gender first, then age, then period, and then unemployed by age. It's a very unhappy topic, I know, but at least it used to go down, so it's all good. So now when we click on tab, we can see that our order has changed and we can clearly navigate. So this also makes it more accessible for people that want to use keyboard instead of something else to navigate around the page. Now, if we take a look at this graph chart over here, clearly the first thing you can do is change the colors. And then let's pick, for example, some dark blue color for the other one. Now, this is a nice contrast. Yeah, probably even everyone can see it. But a couple of things you can also add to this chart so we can make it even more accessible. So sometimes, you know, this data point is not clearly visible. So you can also add some markers. And you also want to make sure that there is some other difference between them. So you can see here the markers are the same. You can either choose the different marker for both lines. So for example, a triangle, or one triangle, one square, and so on. Or you can also, for example, change the line. So instead of a solid line, you can have a dashed line. And it's clearly that they are different. But also here, make sure that you change also in the legend. Because like these, the markers are just the same. And you can change the style, not only to markers, circle default, but line and markers. And now we can see the dashed line over here and the solid line over here. One more thing to make it more accessible is for people that use screen readers. So this is also built in Power BI. you just want to make sure that you add some alt text. So screen readers would read the title, so unemployed by age and year. But if you want to also convey the information, like what this graph is trying to show, you can also add the alt text over here, and it will also be automatically read by the screen reader. No. Let me go back. Now, this is what I wanted to show you from Power BI. Now, if we go back to our presentation, we can see our key takeaway from this part. So please try to find other ways of conveying information, so using icons and text in addition to color, and please make sure that the contrast ratio that you use is at least 4.5 to 1. And this can make sure that everyone can benefit from your reports, so everyone can understand the information. And after all, accessibility is not just a buzzword, but it's a necessity. Now, that covered a lot of theory for today. I hope that didn't bomb you, but let's go over some use cases and real life examples and comment some good and bad designs. Now, I want you to take a look at this report over here. So I'm not going to give you right away the information. I want you to also think about it on your own. Probably I won't be able to follow the chat if you write anything. But here, for example, there are some things that are not right, let's say. But the most important thing that I would mention is that there is a dissonant color palette. So the colors really don't go well together. You can see similar shades of green that don't go together, and some red. It also makes it not accessible, but the color palette is just dissonant, and we can conclude that someone hasn't been using our color wheel. Now, if you take a look at this one over here, we can like what's wrong with this one? Here, it's clear that the contrast is not so right. So the contrast is poor, the text is not so readable on this background, and there are some similar shades around, so it's clearly not accessible. So please make sure that the colors of the text and the background are with at least 4.5 contrast ratio. Now, what about this one over here? So this one even has been following some of the Gestalt principles that we mentioned, right? We can even see some common region around all the charts, but something is obviously wrong here, right? Now, definitely here there are too many visuals, so the report is too crowded. And the first thing you need to do is reduce the number of visuals. And also, and probably more important, is that there is no clear emphasis. So our eyes kind of scan around it without certain point on which we can concentrate. So reduce the number of visuals and make sure you order them right, like use the zip pattern, and make sure you use color intentionally so we can concentrate on the most important parts. Now, what about this one? It's probably why I mentioned here, bad design just screams at you. Like when you see this chart over here, you all know why we shouldn't use this one. And it's just unfitting. First of all, the choice pie chart for showing all these categories, but also what I wanted to mention here regarding the things that we discussed today is that there are just too many colors as well, right? So limit the use of color, keep it simple, and 3 to 5 colors, not more. Now that we saw some really bad design, let's see some examples of good design. So I hope you can all already notice some of the things that we discussed here today. Maybe some Gestalt principles, some use of color, some patterns. Do you notice anything? So here again, as we mentioned before, there is similarity between the key metrics. So we understand that they are, important. They're even lined up over here. Our eyes clearly follow, and it's the first thing that we see over here. Now, there are some things that I would probably change, like the colors over here, but I wanted to show you how colors are used for emphasis, like the black one over here, and so on. Also, the contrast is quite nice. We have black text on a white background, which also makes it accessible. And we even have some common region. So we can see all these KPIs are enclosed in a common region. And also clearly the navigation, again, as I showed you before, it's separated here on the left. Now, I'm showing you this example just to comment on the differences. So here we can also see that there are other ways of conveying information. So not just a number, but there's also a chart accompanying this number. So we can again see some common region here around every of our charts. And also here we can see that the common region is separated with a line. So not with color like here, but with a line. And also, so there is a use of icons like over here. Probably they are universal, but over here we can also see some text accompanying our icon. So that makes sure that everyone can understand which information is where. And to be honest, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can just head to dribble.com with a triple B. You can find some inspiration. There are so many designs there. Even I choose my designs from there. I get my inspiration from there, and you can get some ideas, but also take what you like, maybe combine some reports, or yeah, you can make the changes on your own later on as well. And that concludes our session for today. I just want to go over the key takeaways. So first of all, please design with the user in mind. So always think about the user you're designing for. So understand the needs, the goals, and the behaviors to create a report that really meets their needs and it's easy to use. And the second key takeaway is always do your research, especially when you're tight on time. Use Gestalt principles to create intuitive reports. So use the principles of similarity, proximity, and common region, as we discussed, and explore the rest of them, or wait for some of my next sessions. Use color harmonies. So use the color wheel from Adobe. Just don't overdo it, 3 to 5 colors and not more. And so try to convey information in different ways. So not just with color, but also with icons and text. And make sure that the contrast ratio that you use is 4.5 because you want your reports to be more accessible. And the last key takeaway from today is the same as the first one. So please design with the user in mind. Whether you're designing for a client or your boss, it doesn't matter. Please keep these key takeaways in mind to create a report that not only looks good, but also meets the needs of all your users. Now, I want to give you some additional resources. For example, this is the course that I took from Coursera, from Google. It's really amazing. I can highly recommend it. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to contact me. The second one is a book by Don Norman, and it's called Design of Everyday Things. It's not our Power BI, but it's about understanding why UX design matters. So it's a really fun read. I can recommend it. 3, 4, and 5 are our color tools that I showed you earlier. I can also copy these links for you if you want in the chat when I finish. And the last one is the Web Accessibility Initiative. So if you want to read more about the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, go ahead. And I just want to finish off with this quote today. So good design is a lot harder to notice than poor design, because good design fits our needs so well that the design is invisible. And before I say bye, I just want to say special thanks to my dear mentor, Nikola Ilic. Yes, you're the reason I'm here today, so thank you for inspiring me and supporting me. And of course, thank you to New Stars of Data, to Ben and William, Jess as well, for organizing this session. And I think it's just amazing that we have a place like this so we can see how it is to take the scene, like to be, to be here just. And thank you everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of sorry it's not so interactive. I cannot really see you. I would love to have it a bit more interactive. But thank you everyone for following my session. I hope you all learned something here today. At least I hope you had some fun. I know I did. So here in the bottom, you can again find my contact details, so my email and my LinkedIn. You can scan my QR code. It will take you directly to my LinkedIn profile. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to meet you all and keep in touch. And yeah, as Jess said, please don't forget to leave a feedback for me. I would really appreciate it, as this is my first session ever, and I think it will be really helpful. Now, what's on your mind?